The English VTubing community is growing so quickly, and that's amazing, but it's creating a situation where I'm having trouble keeping up with everyone. I want to know as much about different VTubers as I can, and ideally, if they're willing, involve them in my silliness. So I decided to make a little tweet recently asking VTubers if they would share one interesting fact about themselves so I can make a video sharing that information about as many VTubers, new and old, as possible. And well, I got a lot more responses than I anticipated. Which is a good thing, but it also makes it unrealistic to share everyone's fact in a single video. Instead, I'm going to make a series of VTuber Facts videos, and this is the first, so I hope you enjoy! If you're wondering what order I'm doing this in, the answer is there isn't really a particular order. I'm just scrolling down the thread and I'm tackling these as I go. There's a lot to get through, so it wouldn't really make any sense to do any kind of order. But yeah, let's get to it. So the first up is a bunny VTuber. And he said, not necessarily about me, but my father was a cartoon character, could say he was an ancestor of VTubers. He ran for public office about 5 times and was in the newspaper frequently, aside from the cartoons he drew. That's obviously something about his character. Bunny VTuber has one of the most adorable models I've ever seen, and I really love his stuff. I wish he would get more attention than he does. But that aside, he also offered a personal fact about himself. And that's that he has narcolepsy, which he says is very different from what they portray in the movies. I asked him if he'd talk more about narcolepsy, and this is what he said. Some cases it's a serious pain, since I never move properly through a sleep cycle, or get anything that could be considered a good or proper rest. I don't fall asleep eating soup or anything, but I am prone to doze. Largest issue is it disrupts my sleep/wake cycles pretty drastically. Obviously, it sounds very rough, and when I know that it sounded like it was a really hard thing to live with, he just responded by saying, you kinda get used to it, and I guess that's really all you can do. To end this on a more positive note about Bunny VTuber, he does raps and stuff, and he's very skilled musically, and I am a fan of his. So yeah, again, you should take a look at his stuff. Next up is Red Rock, who said, lore-wise, Red had 2 different servants before I implemented the squirrel and bunny girls. A crazed man with a gun and a talking wolf. They came from a running gag in one of my friend groups, and originally there was also supposed to be a cat and a panda, but I decided against that. If you haven't seen his squirrel and bunnies, they're really cute, but to be honest, I kinda wish I could see the panda now, because I'm sure that would be adorable. Shaddy, who has a much longer name than that, but I don't know how to pronounce it. I actually know Shad really well, I think. Like, we talk a fair amount, but I've never learned how to pronounce his full name properly. But he's actually been on this channel before, in the April Fool's video that we posted a little while back. He was the guy who Evil Pending teleported to his void, who immediately assumed that Evil Pending had tech issues that he wanted him to solve. How many times have you been abducted to help people with their computers?
Like, in the last hour? 'Cause I lost count.
Wow. I'm so sorry. I should just let that one go. They've suffered enough. So yeah, I really liked Chad's performance in that skit, and I hope to have him in more stuff in the future. That aside, I'll read out what he said. I like doing things my own way and having fun with it. Even if I'm doing things wrong, if I can find enjoyment out of doing it wrong, then I'm more likely to stick with something, which I think is a pretty good attitude to have. Killjoy, who is a very good friend of mine, said this. I was born with glass bones and paper skin. Every morning I break my legs, and every afternoon I break my arms. At night I lie awake in agony, until my heart attacks put me to sleep. Which, as it turns out, is a direct quote from SpongeBob SquarePants, and I didn't know that at the time. But yeah, if you don't know Killjoy, he's a really skilled, very funny person. He does Let's Plays on his own channel. In addition to that, he streams sometimes, he edits. He actually edited some of my stuff, including parts of the Halloween skit and the April Fool's skit, because in both cases I was kind of way over my head and he helped me out to make those possible. And he's also a good voice actor. In fact, he's voice acted for me. He voices Hilliard, and he also voices Pending's internal monologue.
You picked perhaps the antithesis of your voice as your internal monologue.
I don't think that's true.
I couldn't bring myself to admit that I had no idea what antithesis meant.
Alright, next is Asu, who is someone that I actually know very well. In fact, we did a Better Know a VTuber with him. But he still gave me a fact that I never knew of. He said, I tend to think with different voices in my head, which surprised me and is something I'm not sure I fully grasp. He explains it as different voices and sometimes even accents, but not different personalities. So it's not like a multiple personality disorder or anything like that. It's just that there's like different tones and accents and I guess sounds of voices in his head, which sounds really fascinating with me because I don't have that at all. Maybe that's more common than I think it is, but it's not something that I personally experienced, so it's hard for me to relate to. But yeah, that's Asu's fact. And if you want to know more about Asu, first off, you can look him up because Asu has his own channel. He streams on YouTube, he streams on Twitch, and he's an awesome person. But if you're so inclined, you can also watch the Better Know a VTuber I did with him, because I thought that was really good. So yeah, that's Asu. Next up is Project Bombshell, who said, I was raised in Las Vegas, so I had no idea supermarkets had business hours until I was 18 and tried to go grocery shopping at 2 a.m. in a different part of the US. She added, I legit thought the supermarket had closed forever and got really confused the next day when I saw people there. Which I think is a really interesting fact, and it makes me super interested in what it would have been like to grow up in Las Vegas. Next up is Overly, who just said, did you know I'm not an actual egg? And if you don't understand why she said that, it's a reference to a recent skit I did with her, where Penny teleports Overly to the void under the assumption that she is a literal egg. And Penny determines that Overly is this special egg, because she can talk. But yeah, if you want, there's also that skit that you can watch, which also had Melanie in it, and personally, I really loved Overly and Melanie's performances in it.
Are you for real? You two at least realize I'm not an actual egg, right?
But your name is Overly.
I'm a fan of them, but that doesn't mean I am one. Think about it. Asking Pending to think about something is hoping for too much. Okay, but if I was an egg, how would I talk?
Wouldn't you talk with your mouth?
Eggs don't have those.
But you have a mouth.
Exactly. So what does that tell you?
That you're a special egg.
Oh, that makes complete sense to me.
Really? I'm so glad we solved this mystery together.
This video where we're learning about other VTubers is turning into elaborate advertisement for my own things. I'm sorry about that. Well, let's get back to them. Alright, next up is Deed, who's one of the original English-speaking VTubers. What he responded with is, Hi, my name is Deed, and I like swords. Well, I guess that's not surprising. And if you're looking at the picture he posted, it has him with a sword. Another fact about Deed is he's awesome, and he makes really funny skits, and you should watch them. He doesn't make a lot of skits, but when he does make a skit, it's really, really good. Oh, another fact about Deed is he makes tracking worlds, which is basically a program you can use in conjunction with VR equipment like a Vive to move your character in a 3D space. So that's super helpful for filming, and yeah, Deed's tracking world is something that you should look into if you have a 3D model and you have VR and you're interested in combining those two together. Next up is Tony, who is someone I learned about through this, and he had a really awesome fact that he shared. His was that he regained the ability to walk unassisted after 6 or 7 years. I noted and kind of stated the obvious that I imagined that took a lot of hard work, to which he responded, it did. Some of the most challenging parts of my life were moving from phase to phase. So I just think it's amazing that he accomplished something like that. I can't imagine going through anything like that personally, but it's really superb that he came out the other end. So yeah, next up is Tinguris, who also goes by Mitchell. And he said, I came to Earth from Kreki after my arch-rival Hades Jagger annihilated half of the Justinian Defense Force and killed my best friend, whose name I can't really pronounce correctly. Part of it is Artemis. And so I followed him to Earth in order to stop his evil. When not defending the Earth, he plays video games in his spare time. So yeah, Tinguris has a really cool backstory. Next up is Cool Dude Zach, who said, the only thing that I could think that would be interesting about me is that I tend to overthink things when it comes to playing video games or doing certain projects like when I'm doing Minecraft art. That's something that I can really relate to. Overthinking things can be sometimes good because it lets you come up with the most rational, logical decision possible, at least in the ideal. But where you run into problems is it can be paralyzing too. Like, there are so many projects that never really got off the ground that I wanted to do because I was kind of thinking it over and over and over and never taking action. So you gotta kind of balance it out, and it's a lot easier said than done. It's certainly not something that I've mastered, but it is definitely something that I strive for. I strive to find that balance. So that's the advice I would give for whatever it's worth. I'm still very much a learner, so, take whatever advice I give with a grain of salt, but that's what I try for, that's what I'm striving for. Next up is our Gamma Witch, who says, I get energy from the moon, and often will stop in my tracks and become distracted by it, just staring and basking in it. I find the moon calming and comforting, which I think is really nice. Honestly, I spend most of my time indoors, but the idea of just sitting outside looking up at the moon, I don't know, that just has a very romantic quality to me. And it's something that, while reflecting about it, I'd really like to do. Maybe once it's warmer, I'm just gonna do that. I'm just gonna go out, lay in the grass, look up at the moon, and just think for a bit. That sounds like a really nice and relaxing thing. Next up is Trinity, whose fact is, I may be a gamer, but I actually hate Mountain Dew. Which I can relate to. I actually pretty much drink exclusively water now, because I'd get an upset stomach if I drank basically anything else. But back in the day when I was big into sodas, Sprite, cream soda, and root beer were my big go-tos. Root beer in particular, like a really good root beer, like the root beers in like the glass bottles that you could get, those were idyllic to me. But yeah, I never really cared for Mountain Dew much, so we have that in common, Trinity. And that's everyone that's going to be in this first video. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope maybe you learned something about some different VTubers. And like I said, I want to turn this into a series of videos because so many people responded, and I want to shine a light on literally everyone who responded. So that's what I'm going to try and do, and hopefully you guys will stick with me through this. And yeah, one last thing I'll say is, if you happen to be in this video, feel free to share more information about yourselves in the comments. And if you're a VTuber in general, feel free to share your information in the comments too. And hey, if you're not a VTuber, feel free to still share your information in the comments, because why not? Everyone deserves to share if they want to. And I hope you're having a good day and a good life, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye!